G'day everybody, welcome back to Faith, Culture, Politics in Australia with Mark. Got a bit of an update for you today from a post that I've seen online on X from Australians versus the Agenda, and it's a little bit of a follow-up in regards to what I spoke into in a video yesterday in regards to the pushback on sovereign citizen type movement and wanting to label everybody that has that is critical of government in the same pot, and making us all out to be radicalised, to be censored. And so I'm going to share that with you today. I'm going to speak into that in detail. The speech is just under 5 minutes from Jacqui, and I'm going to pause it at certain points throughout, and I'm going to talk into what she's saying in more detail. So I'll be flicking between the actual footage of her, plus then going back to my slide deck, the slide deck that I've prepared to be able to unpack what Jacqui's spoken into there. So look, I'll bring the slide deck up. So I do need to just shout out to Australians versus the Agenda, who's the video that come to my attention through their posting, and I watched it and I felt compelled that I wanted to speak into it a little bit further. So credit to them for sharing this little 4.42 minute speech by Jacqui, which I'm going to go through. And obviously this isn't going to be a short presentation. I'm going to unpack it in a bit more detail and pause it at certain places along the way. So look, what I'll do is we'll get into it. I'll start the speech from Jacqui, and then we'll start unpacking it and talking. I'll be doing a bit of talking for this one today, so just bear with me and while we unpack what Jacqui's got to say there for us all. So anyway, we'll kick into it and we'll go.
Sovereign citizens, I'll call it, because I have the courage. They believe that the Australian government, all of us in here, are illegitimate. They believe that the rules and the social norms that the rest of us have to follow do not apply to them. And according to the Australian Federal Police, there is a history of Australians identifying with these ideas and setting up micronations. They're nuts. They lived in small communities and regarded by law enforcement as being largely harmless.
There we go. Let me just pause that really quickly there for you. Now, listen to what she said there. So for a number of years, they've known they've existed. These are people that wanted to be left alone. You know, Bruce Pay talks into this a lot when I catch up with him. Average Australians that just want government out of their life. They want to live on the land. They want as limited amount of government influence as possible. They generally align with, pushing back on medical procedures, pushing back on living a natural lifestyle, living in the land, and just relying on local community, and just wanting as little interaction with government, politics, law enforcement, whatever, as possible. So let's just be clear. What she's saying there is predominantly harmless. So I just wanted to make that point before we continue to play this video there for you.
And then COVID-19 hit, and the government's response, lockdowns, mandatory vaccination combined with mis and disinformation on social media absolutely turbocharged the paranoia where it's now right off the charts. According to the AFP, these groups are organised, they have informal leadership structures, and they find common ground with the anti-vaxxers.
So I wanted to stop that there and just talk into this, to find common ground with anti-vaxxers. And she was clearly, you heard her, she was saying about COVID lockdowns and all these sorts of things could have pushed people to the brink, or everything that happened. And I'll talk further into this as we go. So she did openly admit that about the censorship and lockdowns and mandates and all that sort of stuff. But what I wanted to focus on here in this is just going to talk into, she mentioned about anti-vaxxers. So I'm just going to read this out. I'm just going to remove myself quickly from, I'm just going to make this a bit bigger so people can see it and go through that and read that for you in regards to anti-vaxxers. So traditional people who, after researching or for genuine held beliefs such as lifestyle and faith, chose not to receive vaccines. So these are lumped into anti-vaxxer. People like myself who's had historical vaccines, including vaccinating my now adult children for all their vaccines, but due to investigation, research and consulting with many credible medical professionals, I've weighed up the risks and benefits and chose not to participate any further. But I'm lumped into the anti-vaxxer camp as well. Others in the community who are in the same position as myself and formed a similar view in regard to vaccines. So those in the community are also be labelled anti-vaxxer. Then there's the compliant, or those forced to receive vaccines at the risk of losing employment, who then went on to receive a debilitating injury and are speaking up about their injury. These people are also now classed as anti-vaxxers and so sadly injured and not being supported with any more compensation from the injury schemes. So let's just be clear about who anti-vaxxers could be or who are lumped into the anti-vaxxers. So all of these people continue to be gaslit by people like Senator Lambie. All right, so let's make no mistakes about that. I'll continue with this video now.
Far-right groups and conspiracy nut jobs, because there's no other way to put it, that seek to blame governments and institutions for their lot in life. I got a lot of this heat over COVID just because I came out and said that.
So she's saying conspiracy nut jobs and government overreaction and people pushing back around the COVID era stuff and all the things. So, and I talked into detail about you know, over previous videos about what people are frustrated about over this last 5 years and stuff like that. And you'll see that on this slide, on this next slide that I've shared this before, there's so many things that Australians are challenging government about. They are frustrated about. So there's valid concerns and reasons for people to be critical of government. And I talked about the mistrust that people have as a result of the way that things are being managed in regards to our government, the ineptitude and so forth, which I'll talk into a bit further as well. But so she's talking in there. She just mentioned about misinformation and conspiracy theorists. So I did want to talk into this idea about conspiracy theorists over the last, in the context of the last 5 years, and I'm going to go through some things that were labelled as conspiracy theories and challenged a lot of people speaking up about it over COVID. So I'm just going to take a few minutes now to go through a bit of a little bit of a list of things that they classed as conspiracy theory and talk into that. So let's have a look at the first one here. So the first one is the lab leak. So the lab leak origin of SARS-CoV-2, early suggestions that the virus escaped from a lab in Wuhan, example the Wuhan Institute of Virology, were widely dismissed as conspiracy theory or right-wing misinformation by media outlets and scientists, with platforms like Facebook initially banning related posts and outlets like NPR calling it debunked. The FBI concluded with moderate confidence that a lab leak was likely. The WHO initially deemed it extremely unlikely, but later called for further investigation, citing China's lack of transparency. In proximity of the lab to the outbreak, its bat coronavirus research and leaked documents, example the defuse proposal for gain-of-function work, added credence. So there you go. You're talking about conspiracy theorists being allowed to talk about things there, Jacqui. Let's have a look at another one. The US funding of gain-of-function research in Wuhan. US funding of gain-of-function research in Wuhan claims, so the claims were that US via NIH and EcoHealth Alliance funded potentially risky gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Experiments that could make viruses more transmissible or virulent were initially denied by Dr. Anthony Fauci in congressional testimony and labeled as misinformation. A House panel report and NIH Deputy Director Lawrence Tobac's testimony acknowledged US-funded gain-of-function in Wuhan. Let's have a look at vaccine side effects like myocarditis. Vaccine side effects like myocarditis, early reports of rare heart inflammation, myocarditis, pericarditis, post-mRNA vaccination, especially in young males, were downplayed as proven as coincidental by officials. Example, the CDC director in 2021 stated no link. Skeptics raising alarms were accused of spreading fear. Later, CDC and FDA confirmed the association, adding warnings to labels in 2021-2023, and studies have shown it to be a real risk. Harms from lockdowns, economic and mental health. So warnings that prolonged lockdowns would cause severe economic downturns, job losses and mental health crisis. Example, increased depression, anxiety, suicides were criticised as overblown or insensitive to virus risks, with proponents labelled as prioritising economy over lives. Post-pandemic studies confirmed that these lockdowns reduced mental health by 0.083 standard deviations driven by isolation, especially in women. Boosted depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, example 31 to 43% moderate severe distress, and caused global job income losses. Healthcare workers and youth were hit hardest, with economic slowdowns exacerbating global mental health burdens. So, government has contributed to creating our lot, Jacqui. She was mentioning earlier in that video about, that the government isn't responsible for our lot, is not responsible for everything in our life. Well, government has gone a long way to contributing to our lot, Jacqui. Limited efficacy of masks for general public. Limited efficacy of masks for general public. Universal mask mandates were pushed as highly effective, with skeptics questioning broad efficacy, example in low-risk settings or outdoors, labelled as anti-science or conspiratorial. Later reviews and models showed mixed results. Masks reduce transmission in controlled settings but have lower real-world effectiveness, example due to improper use or household spread where masks aren't worn, with some studies finding only modest community impact. CDC and WHO revised guidance, noting they're most effective indoors, high risk, not universally. Now there are even studies indicating negative efficacy due to microfibers. And so that was that. A little bit of a breakdown of the conspiratorial aspect that she's talking into. So she's labeling so many people that research, look at all the information, everything else like that. They were speaking and shouting from the rooftops about concerns, about lots of stuff that in the real world, over a period of time, with science and further research has indicated that they weren't actually theories after all, and people were correct in calling that stuff out. But she's labeling everybody with the same things. So, look, let's have a look, listen a little bit more to Jacqui now, and then I'll talk into the next little thing that she's mentioning.
Vaccine mandates were about keeping people safe and alive, especially our elderly, because I'm all about putting Australians first. The hate and abuse that came through my office was absolutely disgraceful. No doubt they will start up again after this speech, but we will need to call these people out. You have to show some courage, and where appropriate, we need to actually get them help. They need help. A Victorian called our office during COVID and told one of my staffers that Bill Gates had done a deal with Daniel Andrews, then Victorian government, to put microscopic trackers in the vaccine so the government could track people through 5G towers. I mean, that's how off the charts this stuff is. It's off the charts.
So I'm just going to pause that there, and I just do want to reiterate, there's obviously stuff out there, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit further, that is just way off the scales. And don't get me wrong, my eyes have been opened up to so much in this world, and I look at everything now, investigate everything that these people rabbit on about and try to propagate and propagandize into our lives. But there's obviously stuff out there that is so far beyond the comprehension of realism, and that's fine. But she's saying that everything, people questioning and bringing links in around this, the vaccines and you know, the body and tracking and all those sorts of things. Let's have a look at that, because I had a little bit of a look at some patents. So let me just bring up a couple of things to go through here, and I'll read into this a bit further. So in here, I've found some patents. We'll talk about some patents. Just remove that there for a second. Biosensors and nanotechnology, US patent US 9539210B2, issued in 2017, covers vaccine nanocarriers for immune system delivery using ferritin nanoparticles for drug or antigen transport. It focuses on medical delivery. Similarly, WO2023028355A1, filed in 2022, describes an implantable biosensor with plasmonic nano antenna for communicating and sensing, mentioning joint 5G applications, but it's for biological monitoring, example glucose levels. Tracking and RFID like tech, patents like US 91011279B2, issued 2015, involve mobile or wearable brain activity tracking with environmental data. Quantum dot tattoos, example microneedle patches funded by the Gates Foundation, use microscopic fluorescent markers delivered under the skin for vaccination records visible under near-infrared light. These are passive, apparently no active transmission. 5G related patents, many focus on general 5G infrastructure such as US 1027743-7B2, issued 2019 for telematic and location finding in vehicles, or broader 5G SEP, which is standard essential patents landscape. Now just read that for you again, for telematic and location finding. So where's the next step in regard for vehicles? So where's the next step in being able to have something like that implanted under your skin? And I'm not saying that the vaccines were about, but we're talking about lots of other technologies and ongoing, you know, micro patches, micro needles and all these sorts of things. And then a microneedle delivery US 20130085472A1, filed in 2012, describes microneedle nasal devices for drug delivery for administration, example vaccines. So look, Jacqui, there's people aren't too far from the truth in that. Okay, there might be a bit of exaggeration, there might be a bit of confusion, but ultimately the technology has been developed, it's been patented, it's being pushed, and in every aspect of our life it's being pushed more. And Australia has invested, and in collaboration with millions of dollars plant, Moderna plant, focusing on mRNA technology and delivery systems there. So look, let's not beat around the bush and continue to call people labels and names that are questioning and researching and everything. And what you're looking to enact through this speech, as we'll go on to find further, you're actually looking to stop people like me investigating these sorts of things and these sort of topics. So, but anyway, for now we'll just keep going a little bit further. Let's bring up the video again from Jacqui.
Finally, this caller told my staff that she did not recognise the government because she was a sovereign citizen. You can laugh, and we did at the time, but seriously, it's out of control. But the extremes of these beliefs and the amplifying of these views on social media led to the murders of 2 policemen and a Queensland man in 2022, and the awful events that are still unfolding in Victoria today. And it's about time.
So the reason I'm pausing that now, I just wanted to talk into that quickly. She's mentioning the most recent incident that I spoke into last night, and she's also referencing the 2022 trains event. Now, we've got to wait for all the information to come out. There's still a lot of commentary online. There's still a lot of information that's not been provided about the background of Desi and what he was going through and the types. And I explained in regards to how Victorians in particular were pushed to the edge by everything that was enacted on them through those COVID years. So let's wait for, before you start labelling everybody that's critical of government and is speaking out about the ineffectiveness of government, the ineptitude of government, the overreach of government, and labelling them all in that same category as someone who's taken that next step. Come on, Jacqui, let's not label everybody that is talking into that, all right, with the same brush, which is what you're trying to do. Anyway, I'll continue playing this.
Companies to control the mis and disinformation that these algorithms pump out. You're not doing anything. That's the problem. In 2012, Facebook said its mission was, listen to this, and I quote, to expand and strengthen relationships between people, end quote. 13 years later, nothing has happened but the opposite. And Facebook, with other social media companies, including YouTube, all they do is fanning division and hatred within our communities.
All right, let's have a look into that a little bit further. What she's talking about there, in regards to the misinformation and Facebook and YouTube and algorithms and all that. Let's have a bit of a look at this. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, 2020 to 2023, major search engines like Google manipulated their algorithms to prioritize authoritative sources, example, the WHO, CDC, and demote or remove content labeled as misinformation, often under the guise of public health protection. This included SOS alerts, redirecting users to official information, machine learning to flag unverified claims on treatments, vaccines, origins, and manual curation suspending normal rankings. Critics from various political viewpoints condemned these changes as censorship that suppressed alternative perspectives, scientific debates, and emerging evidence contradicting official narratives, ultimately stifling free speech and delaying public awareness of valid concerns. For instance, they argued it created filter bubbles that shielded users from dissenting views, exacerbating polarization and potentially hindering scientific progress. So in regards to and supporting these critics, some things that support these criticisms include internal leaks and whistleblower accounts. Project Veritas exposures showed Google executives discussing blacklisting content, questioning vaccine safety or other official stances, extending pre-existing biases against conservative populist views to COVID topics. Dr. Robert Epstein's research highlighted Google's manipulations, shifting millions of views, including during the pandemic. Independent studies and audits. Analysis from Harvard's Misinformation Review and Oxford Internet Institute revealed algorithmic biases favoring government media sources, example 80 to 90% of top results for coronavirus searches, with randomization or suppression of alternative URLs, contrasting with less biased engines like Yandex. A 2023 Knight Columbia study noted de-amplification reduced misinformation, but also legitimate debates by over 50%. Specific suppressed topics later validated. The lab leak theory was initially buried in search results as a conspiracy, delaying awareness until US intelligence reports 2021 deemed it plausible. Vaccine side effects like myocarditis were downplayed via fact checks until CDC FDA confirmations in 2021 through to 2022. User reports and platforms coordination. On X, users frequently noted needing alternatives like DuckDuckGo to access info on vaccine harms or ivermectin, which Google censored. The Twitter files exposed US government influence on big tech, including search engines, to suppress narratives. So they claim this is all these things as misinformation and conspiracy theorists and all these. And she's talking about the the companies like Google and Facebook and YouTube not doing their bit, but they, through that whole COVID period, our many voices that were screaming from the rooftops, professionals in their field were actually censored during that time. And she was talking specifically into YouTube and Facebook, so I thought I'd do a little bit more on that. So evidence regarding Facebook, Meta and YouTube's participation in COVID-19 information suppression measures 2020 to 2023 framed as anti-misinformation efforts but criticised as censorship. So Facebook's actions removed millions of posts, example over 12 million from March to October 2020, and added labels, warnings to content contradicting WHO and CDC guidance on origins, treatments or vaccines. Admitted to government pressure by Mark Zuckerberg's 2024 letter to Congress revealed Biden officials pushed for censorship, including satire, leading to policy changes and suppression of heterodox views, example, lab leak theory. The evidence was congressional reports from 2023-24, Harvard studies showing inconsistent labeling, only 16% of misinformation was flagged, and user surveys indicating censorship of alternative scientific opinions. YouTube's actions banned and demonized videos challenging official narratives on virus origins, vaccines or treatments aligning with WHO health authorities, collaborated with governments. In 2024, House reports detailed White House requests for removals, part of broader public-private collusion. The evidence, policy updates, AEI reports on censored experts, Bloomberg critiques of overreach, example suppressing lab leak discussions, and studies questioning censorship's effectiveness in curbing misinformation without harming discourse. Critics argue these stifled free speech and valid debates, though platforms claim public health benefits. Ongoing legal academic scrutiny highlights overreach. So just going on from that, here in Australia, when Elon Musk took over Twitter and it became X, there was the Twitter files exposure. In Australia wasn't immune either, so we had the Oz Twitter files, and many people were talking into it, including Alex Antich and stuff like that. So I also did a little bit of a write-up article about that back then as well, and so this was in my Substack back in September 24, and the article was revisiting the Australian Twitter files in light of the Combating Misinformation and Disinformation Bill. So this came about through an article from Marianne Damasi about free speech in Australia being under threat. So Marianne Damasi recently put an article together about the federal government's Combating Misinformation and Disinformation Bill 2023. So encourage people to follow up that Marianne Damasi reports Substack, and she's done amazing work. But if you're interested, I also did a little bit of an article myself back in the early days, so around I think it was 2023. So as it was relevant, I felt it was a good opportunity to revisit a piece I put together in May 2023 covering the Australian Twitter files. Although some are linked in the article, here's a link to some of my correspondence over the past few years. So all my correspondence is actually on a drive people can access. Every day I'm realising more and more that government is not my friend. Here's the article. So that article is linked to that, revisiting the Australian Twitter files in there as well, if people are interested and they want to follow that up. But clearly Clearly, Australia was also involved in this whole censorship. The Australian government was involved in this collaboration between media platforms to suppress information, which is really, really critical to understand. So people need to be aware that that's all happened. So, and you continue to research and that. So, but anyway, we'll keep going here. Just bring up Jacqui again. Sorry, a bit clunky with going backwards and forwards, but we'll just bring Jacqui up again and play that.
Extreme examples of this include the January 6th attack on the Capitol building in Washington in 2021, when Americans who believed Trump's lies that the 2020 election was rigged stormed the Capitol building, their own, and seriously wounding American Capitol Police. Since we got social media, we now have more countries in the world run by dictators. Work that one out, where people don't get free and fair elections and the civil rights that we enjoy. Social media can't.
So I just wanted to stop that there, and she's not far from the truth there, but I just want to cover what she's talking into there. So I'll just, bring up a little bit of other research that I've come across as well. So, and talking into what she's talking about there, since the early 2000s, coinciding with media's rise, authoritarian regimes, often led by dictators, have increased from circa 80 in 2005 versus 98 democracies to 92 by 2019, surpassing democracies at 87, with 2023-25 estimates at 50 to 60 strict dictatorships are not free countries per Freedom House and VDEM indices. This democratic backsliding since 2006 affects circa 38% of the global population by 2024, driven by inequality, populism, and social media's dual role in fostering dissent and enabling authoritarian surveillance propaganda. But then, this is another little bit that I want you to really focus on as well, is intelligence agencies, especially US-led, have exploited social media for regime change operations to promote democracy by aiding dissidents and protests, though critics decry it as an interference that can backfire, which is the general term is blowback. Authoritarians counter by using platforms for control. So some examples are US-funded Zunzaneo app in Cuba, 2010 to 2012, to incite unrest, exposed in 2014. State Department pressure on Twitter during Iran's 2009 Green Movement and 2022 protests for coordination. US training for Arab Springs activists 2010-2011 in Egypt, Tunisia via Facebook and Twitter, aiding regime topples but enabling counter-repression. And alleged Western support in Hong Kong 2019 and Ukraine 2014. Russia, China ran similar foreign ops, example bots, disinformation, while curbing domestic use, raising ethical issues on sovereignty. So let's just read that again. Russia, China, Iran run similar foreign ops, so bots and information, while curbing domestic use, raising ethical issues on sovereignty. Now, what Jacqui Lambies is calling for here in this speech about the whole sovereign citizen movement expose that the media and everybody else is conducting is asking for the same thing. So all these further controls around mis and disinformation is speaking directly, which is pretty hypocritical, very hypocritical of Jacqui, because she's asking to do exactly the same thing as Russia, China, Iran, while curbing domestic use, raising ethical issues on sovereignty. Isn't that what you're calling for, Jacqui? I'm pretty sure that's what you're calling for. And I'm pretty sure that raises a lot of ethical concerns as well. So she's wanting a lot stricter regulation. So let's have a listen a bit further.
Companies know more about us than our governments do. They design their algorithms with one purpose in mind, to increase us clicking and increase their profits. It's just about money. They don't give a stuff about who we are. If these algorithms can be so targeted, why can't they target mis and disinformation? Instead of the algorithm that sends Australians down these rabbit holes, serving them up more and more conspiracy theories that make them more afraid and more paranoid. We still don't have laws in this country that deal with truth in political advertising. You can't lie about a product in Australia, but you can sure as hell lie in political campaigns. How is that leading by example and saying that is acceptable behaviour in Australia today? That is not acceptable behaviour. We need to get onto this. It is really trying to put pressure on the social media companies and start talking regulation. What is your fear of social media companies? You lost control of social media when it comes to our kids. And if you think AI is going to be any different in the future because you're already miles behind, you are bloody delusional yourselves.
So Jacqui's asking for further regulation, which she was just talking about there. And doesn't that sound familiar? Is curbing domestic use, raising ethical issues on sovereignty. So she's asking for the agenda to be set by government. She's asking for regulation in regards to this. So that's why if she's pushing for further regulation and restrictions, she's absolutely enabling these types of things that governments have done to suppress free and open speech and debate. So anyway, let's just listen to this last little bit.
That is the truth of the matter. You must get onto this. You must show some courage. Do you know it got so bad during COVID? I had people in Tasmania telling me that serum going into their arms was forming a microchip. Well, I have you know I've had my body x-rayed over time because of my back complaint. There are no microchips running around in my body. That is the misinformation, disinformation that is going on in social media. Okay, that is the reality of it, and we need to wake up in here because people are getting harmed because of it.
So there you go. That was the full clip from Jacqui, but let's have a little bit of a chat about what the overall message is for Jacqui. She's saying that there's people that obviously mention some stuff that is so far and outrageous, but anyway, I don't take anything off the table these days. I have an open mind. I look at things a lot more than I used to, and so are many more others are doing the same thing. And this is what they're afraid of. They're afraid of people researching and putting things together, putting things like this together, and explaining to people what's going on. And they would want to shut platforms like this down and many others to talk out. Right. So that's what she's wanting to do. And sure, there's some people. There's definite hate speech. We want to be able to push back and call, violence. Calling people to violence and all that incitement and all that sort of stuff. Sure, all that's got to be addressed. But let's have a look in regards to this is a sort of position of what free speech absolutists talk about in regards to these things. So free speech absolutists reject censorship for misinformation or hate speech, favouring more speech via open debate, education and norms to expose falsehoods. So key recommendations include counter speech. So refute harmful content through rebuttals, fact checks, public condemnation and amplified truths. Example, users on X engaging objectionable posts with replies or evidence, counter evidence. Education and media literacy, teach critical thinking and source evaluation via curricula or campaigns to empower discernment without authority intervention. Decentralized platforms, promote open source alternatives, example Mastodon, for user-curated experiences via filters and blocks, avoiding central control. Social norms, use boycotts or reputational pressure to deter harms, supporting private disassociation but not state bans. So, people calling for violence against someone else can, ridicule that person, call someone out, or do not, or just, don't follow or give them any airspace in that. Transparency tools encourage algorithmic openness, user fact-checking and voluntary labeling. Similar examples like X community notes without removals. So look, critics say these are inadequate against amplified dangers, but absolutists warn censorship invites power abuse by and by government in particular, as we're seeing the narratives being shifted. Anonymity online is also challenged, as people can say what they like to someone in a post without real world consequences. And I've had discussions about this with other like-minded people about that. You know, you walk into a pub to someone and you know, you can give them what for and tell them F off or challenge them, and you know, you can soon find out you end up with a bloody nose as someone takes offence to that. You don't have that on social media. With your anonymity, you can just throw anything out there. But removing anonymity in certain cases like whistleblowers risks retribution or people not coming forward anymore. So look, there is options then, rather than the government restricting everything that's put out there, as Jacqui Lambies calling for here. I push back on Jacqui Lambie vehemently in that regard, and I believe that that we should all be pushing back on the assertion that there needs to be more powers and more regulation to censor speech. There's even things like my platform, suppress, deplatform, whatever, and having the government have the control of narrative and speech is very, very concerning. So I don't support it. I'm going to continue to speak out against it, as are many others doing the same thing. But so in closing, and I'm not quite finished yet, I'm going to just bear with me for a little bit, but I want to bring a bit of context around some of this. I'm going to circle back to the lack of trust. So we're talking about, she's labelling everybody in that's critical of government, so lack of trust and sentiment, which is critical of government, politicians, bureaucrats, and legacy media. I'm going to play something that I put together, pieced together quite a while ago, and it's been shown before. So if you've seen it before, you've probably likely seen it before, but just bear with me, because while you watch and listen to these people's words very carefully, just even close your eyes and listen to what they're saying, and ask yourself, is there valid reason why the people of this nation, so people that called for bodily autonomy, called out the lockdowns, called out the heavy-handed response to COVID, called out the heavy-handed tactics used, the violence in Victoria in particular, and other things, and the suppression. So if you're feeling the way that I do in regards to lack of trust towards politicians, bureaucrats, the legacy media, all these narratives in particular, and people like Jacqui Lambie herself, just have a listen to how they treated you, the contempt they had for people, and predominantly people that chose bodily autonomy in regards to the medical procedures. Just have a listen and ask yourself, why aren't more people calling out and pushing back on this whole idea that anybody that's critical of government should be lumped in with extremists? But you make up your own mind. Again, you've probably seen it, but just going to let you watch this.
After almost 2 years behind a hard border,
proof of vaccination will be required for entry at nightclubs, the Crown Complex, the 4 major stadia, being Optus Stadium, RAC Arena, HBF Stadium and HBF Park, and at events with 1,000 or more patrons.
Remembering, we do not have a mandatory vaccination policy in this country. We do not have that. We are not proposing to have that. That is not changing.
If you want to go to the stadium, you want to go to RAC Arena or each of the HBF parks, you'll need to be double dose vaccinated. If you want to come into Western Australia from interstate, or you want to fly interstate and come back, you need to be double dose vaccinated.
Remembering, we do not have a mandatory vaccination policy in this country.
We haven't had any health advice that we should do that. And what we're saying to people, as of January 10, when 5 to 11s become eligible, we'd encourage people to get their children vaccinated. The impact of the virus on children is actually far less than on older people, but as a safety measure, please get your children vaccinated. I mean, we are a very safe jurisdiction. Trying to encourage vaccination by every measure possible is the right thing to do. The virus will find the unvaccinated. That's what they all say. Internationally, interstate, where they've had COVID, it will find the unvaccinated. So you might live in the middle of the desert, but it can still find you.
Remembering we do not have a mandatory vaccination policy in this country.
Take up in parts of the territory.
No, and I'll repeat it. If you are anti-mandate, you are absolutely anti-vax. I don't care what your personal vaccination status is. If you support, champion, give a green light, give comfort to, support anybody who argues against the vaccine, you are an anti-vaxxer. Absolutely. Your personal vaccination status is utterly irrelevant. If you campaign against the mandate, if you campaign against people being vaccinated in vulnerable settings, teachers in classrooms, I'll be really clear. At that point in time, people are actually supporting the idea of a teacher being unvaccinated in a remote community classroom with kids who cannot be vaccinated. I reject that utterly, and I still reject it. And if you are out there in any way, shape or form campaigning against this mandate, you are absolutely anti-vax. If you say pro-persuasion, stuff it, shove it. We are absolutely going to make sure as many Territorians as possible are vaccinated. That is our best protection against this thing. And if you look at the Doherty modelling that's only come out since, that says if you double dose 80 in remote communities, 5 and up, I think you'll see our vaccine mandate is absolutely crucial to protecting lives, particularly Aboriginal lives. And I will never back away from supporting vaccines. And anyone out there who comes for the mandate, you are anti-vax.
We are not even looking at removing the mandate. It's not even something that's on the agenda. So that is not a good plan at all. It's not on the agenda at all. The immediate priority for the unvaccinated is to protect them from infection. And that means to keep unvaccinated people away from crowded environments. Because you'll remember that these hospitality locations have had a lot of their restrictions lifted, so people can live their, vaccinated people can live their lives normally. And it's not fair on the vaccinated to ask them to make sacrifices for the very small number of people who have not become vaccinated.
The message to the unvaccinated is that you will not achieve any further freedom unless you get vaccinated. And a further and final message to regional New South Wales. There are parts of regional New South Wales that are currently open. The 70% roadmap does apply to the whole state. So there will be individuals in regional rural New South Wales who choose not to be vaccinated who will lose their freedoms on the 11th of October, because Freedom Day is only a couple of weeks away. Thank you.
Premier, Mr Barilaro just said that the message to the unvaccinated is that you will not achieve any further freedom until you get vaccinated. But under this plan, on the 1st of December, anti-vaxxers will have exactly the same freedoms as everybody else and a raft of more freedoms will be introduced.
But it's very important to note that unlike most places in the world, if you're not vaccinated, you'll have to wait at least 4 or 5 weeks after we've already hit the 80% double dose rate in order to participate in things that the rest of us can participate in. So that is a big high jump for people to have to go through if you're not vaccinated. The message is, if you want to be able to have a meal with friends, if you want to welcome people into your home, you have to get vaccinated. That's a simple message. And if you don't, if you choose not to, that's okay, but you'll have to wait a long time before you can participate in other activity. So the strongest message to those that are unvaccinated is you're going to have to wait weeks and weeks and weeks. In fact, you're going to have to wait several months before you can do anything. I mean, most of us who are fully vaccinated will be able to participate in community life, in hospitality in 2 weeks' time. Those of you who are unvaccinated will have to wait at least another couple of months before that happens.
There's been a lot of discussion about this already, but have you reconsidered allowing freedoms for both the vaccinated and non-vaccinated when we get to those vaccination milestones at some stage?
I'm not going to say to someone, oh, look, just wait us out, will you? Just wait 4 or 5 weeks and then you'll be able to go to the pub. No, if you make the judgment to not get vaccinated and you reckon you can wait out us or the publican or whoever you want to think you're waiting out, you won't wait out the virus, because the virus will be here for a long time and your only protection against it is being vaccinated. This will be well into 2022, well and truly into 2022. Then we're going to get into booster issues, so it won't be your first and second dose. It'll be have you had your third? And then the other issue will be, well, who knows what variant's coming? Who knows? Like, we don't. and that's to keep people who are not vaccinated out of some of those venues that we've been talking about today.
How long do you foresee us
I can't put a date on it.
vaccination?
I cannot put a date on it, but I can tell you this: it will not be when we reach 90%. It will not be, you know, anytime soon. That's going to function for a period of time well into 2022.
There's been reports that there's been thousands.
For instance, I'll give you an example. The Grand Prix is in April. I don't think there's going to be crowds at the Grand Prix made up of people who have not been double dosed. Just to give you a time frame. Doesn't mean it'll end the day after the Grand Prix, but that just gives you some sense. Please don't play that game of let's just wait them out and then we'll be able to do everything we want to do and have not got jabbed. No, that will not be the case here.
One Nation is the champion for the right for unvaccinated. I don't think so. It's not going to happen under my watch, and I doubt very much if it's going to happen under Premier Gutwin's watch. We're not going to stand for it. The way out of lockdowns and restrictions is vaccinations because there is nothing else on the table. Let's be honest about that. It is the only weapon we have. That's what we need to do. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made. This bill flies in the face of all of that, and that's why I absolutely oppose every bit of it.
I personally would not want anyone unvaccinated coming to my Christmas party, and that's probably, you know, about where it would sit for me.
I appreciate greatly the work done by all the premiers and chief ministers and seeing those national vaccination rates get to where they are. We've got one more state to get through that gate. As it's a bit like, you know, getting the sheep through the gate and into the rain.
So there you go. That was circling back to that. I hope that resonated with you, and it was powerful for you to listen to that all again, and reiterates the fact that there should be enough people out there that are allowed to be critical of government and critical of bureaucrats, critical of media handling, and critical of people like Senator Jacqui Lambies. But you know what? All these labels and all the attacks that we've received over the last 5 years has made me more resilient, and I suspect a lot more people more resilient. I will not forget, and I will continue to work to call out the hypocrisy and the overreach of government and what Jacqui Lambies indicating there is more regulation and suppression. So look, at the end of the day, I pray for you, Jacqui. I really do, and I pray for healing. Pray for your soul, and I'll continue to push back on people like yourself in government who have the platform of being able to speak for nearly 5 minutes and ridicule those that and lump everybody in the same boat as someone that's snapped and gone too far. So I take that personally. I'm a family man, as I've said. I've lived as best a life that I can, been working since I was 14, paid my taxes, have been non-belligerent. I'm a pacifist, non-violent. I am just trying to do my bit to live my life the best way I can. And unfortunately, we've got to a stage where government wants to assert more and more power into my life and to the average Australian's life, and you're trying to suppress information of people like me trying to get that out. So I vehemently push back on everything that you assert in that nearly 5-minute speech, everything that you want to achieve out of this categorisation. But I do pray for you, Jacqui. I remember your early questioning in regards to safety of children's vaccines with Professor Skerritt and Murphy and so forth. But then something happened in between, and who are you answerable to, Jacqui? Who are you really answerable to? But anyway, Godspeed, everybody, and as usual, I'll be finishing off with a little Christian blues. So this one is "Let the Spirit Move." So take care, everybody, and God bless.
Well, I walked into the valley, heart so dry, feeling like a desert, no rain in sight. But I heard a voice like the rolling tide saying, lift your hands, let me come inside. Oh, I feel that fire burning deep. Holy Spirit, take the lead. Let the Spirit move. Let the rivers flow. Wash my soul. Lord, make me whole. Ain't no chains, ain't no doubt. When the Spirit moves, I'm dancing out. Oh, these dry bones start to shake. Dead man walking, wide awake. Ain't no power gonna hold me still. I'm moving now by the Father's will. Let the Spirit move. Let the rivers flow. Wash my soul. Lord, make me whole. Ain't no chains, ain't no doubt. When the Spirit moves, I'm dead.